Section 3 of Americans All, Immigrants All. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. This recording is by Mark Smith of Simpsonville, South Carolina. Americans All, Immigrants All, by the United States Department of the Interior, Office of Education. Section 3, When We Came to the United States. 1536, Spaniards begin to settle in California and in the Southwest. 1565, Spaniards establish St. Augustine, oldest city in the United States. 1607, English establish Jamestown, the oldest English settlement in North America. 1619, Negroes are first brought in as slaves. 1620, English pilgrims land at Plymouth Rock. 1624, Walloons from Netherlands settle Fort Orange, now Albany, New York. 1626, Netherlanders establish New Amsterdam on Manhattan Island. 1628, persecuted Protestants established the Massachusetts Bay Colony. 1634, Lord Baltimore and a group of English Catholics arrive in Maryland. 1636, Roger Williams and his followers establish Rhode Island. 1636 as well, Connecticut is founded by Thomas Hooker and his religious group. 1638, Swedes and Finns settle along the Delaware River. 1639, John Mason and his followers come to New Hampshire. 1654, 23 Portuguese Jews land at New Amsterdam from Brazil. 1662, Huguenots settle in Massachusetts on the present site of Oxford. 1663, English nobles, with grant from Charles II, established North Carolina. 1664, English capture New Amsterdam and rename it New York. 1664 as well, Berkeley, Carteret, and others established New Jersey. 1670, English make first permanent settlement in South Carolina. Also 1670, French fur traders and missionaries come to the Mississippi Valley. 1679, French Huguenots settle in South Carolina. 1681, the Quakers, led by William Penn, settle Pennsylvania. 1682, the first Germans come to Pennsylvania. 1690, about 200 Scotch-Irish settle in Maryland. 1693, English help to settle 600 German-Swiss in North Carolina. 1699, the Acadians come to Louisiana and reach as far as Biloxi in present-day Mississippi. 1700, the Scotch-Irish settle along the frontiers. 1710, first German Protestants arrive in New York. 1719, Acadians established New Orleans, Louisiana. 1720, between 1720 and 1750, 60,000 Germans come to Pennsylvania. 1732, Oglethorpe founds Georgia. 1733, German Lutherans, Italian Protestants from Piedmont, Scots, Swiss, Portuguese Jews, and English arrive in Georgia. 1737, Irish laborers come to South Carolina. 1749, about 600 Scots settle near Fayetteville, North Carolina. 1750, over 4,300 Germans and 1,000 English and Irish arrive in Pennsylvania. 1790, between 1790 and 1820, about 234,000 newcomers arrive. 1807, slave trade is forbidden. 1817, 20,000 people come from Europe. 1819. First United States Passenger Act, marking beginning of systematic immigration statistics. 1842. Annual immigration first reaches 100,000. 1847. Annual immigration passes 200,000. 1845. Large German influx begins as a result of political unrest. 1847. Irish begin to come in large numbers because of famine and political oppression. 1851. Annual immigration passes 300,000. 1853. About 13,000 Chinese laborers arrived to work in the California gold mines. 1855. Castle Garden, New York, established as principal immigrant station. 1860. Slavs and Southern Europeans begin to arrive. 1870. More than 15,000 Chinese arrive to work on the railroads. 1880. Because of militarism and overpopulation in Germany, Germans again begin to arrive in large numbers. Also 1880. Between 1880 and 1900, large numbers of Scandinavians arrive because introduction of machinery takes place of men on Scandinavian farms. 1881. For next 15 years, an average of nearly 500,000 arrive each year. 1882. Idiots, lunatics, and persons likely to become public charges are excluded. 1890. For next 30 years, Italians, Austrians, Hungarians, and Slavs pour into the United States to supply demand for unskilled labor. 1890. Ellis Island replaces Castle Garden as chief immigrant station. 1891. More than 1,000 Japanese arrive. Also 1891. The Office of Superintendent of Immigration is established in the Treasury Department. 1900. More than 12,000 Japanese arrive. Also 1900. Between 1900 and 1914, more than 3 million Italians and about 6 million people from Slavic countries enter. 1905. Annual immigration first exceeds 1 million. 1907, immigration reaches all-time peak of 1,285,349. Also 1907, Immigration Commission is set up. 1917, during World War and afterwards, thousands of Mexicans crossed the border. 1919, flow of immigrants from Europe again gets underway. 1921, temporary quota law restricting immigration. 1924, permanent quota law restricting immigration to 150,000 annually. 1938, annual immigration drops to about 70,000. End of section. Americans All, Immigrants All. Section 4. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. This recording is by Mark Smith of Simpsonville, South Carolina. Americans All, Immigrants All, by the U.S. Department of the Interior, Office of Education. Section 4. The development of our immigration policy. Those who have come to our shores, representing many kindreds and tongues, have been welded by common opportunity into a united patriotism. By Franklin D. Roosevelt. Long before the Revolutionary War, the colonies enacted restrictive immigration laws. Many of these laws were based on religious prejudices, which, although somewhat softened in intensity, still existed when the new nation was born. Fear and consequent hatred of foreigners and foreign influence were widely prevalent in the early years of the Republic. John Adams, Alexander Hamilton, Patrick Henry, John Jay, and other prominent statesmen opposed the introduction of aliens into the political or economic life of the country. Thomas Jefferson believed that natural expansion of the existing population would be sufficient to meet the country's needs. Even George Washington in 1794 said, "My opinion with respect to emigration is that except of useful mechanics and some particular descriptions of men or professions, there is no need of encouragement." The prevailing spirit found expression in stringent naturalization laws which, however, were soon modified. The open door. While the federal government was not unmindful of its inherent right to determine who might or might not come or remain within its borders, yet for 100 years after the Revolutionary War ended, the country's doors were open to all who chose to enter, regardless of race, of physical, mental, or economic condition, of religious or political affiliation, or even of moral character. An era of comparative tranquility prevailed toward immigration until the 1840s, when a great flood of immigrants focused hostility against the Germans and Irish, a feeling which continued until the outbreak of the Civil War. A strong movement developed in Congress in favor of regulating or even limiting immigration, but nothing came of it. In a message to Congress in 1841, President Tyler gave expression to a sentiment that grew stronger with the passing of the years. He said, "We hold out to the people of other countries an invitation to come and settle among us as members of our rapidly growing family, and for the blessings we offer them, we require of them to look upon our country as their country and unite with us in the great task of preserving our institutions and thereby perpetuating our liberties." The open-door policy continued, for Congress was reluctant to abandon the time-honored belief that the United States had been dedicated at the beginning as a refuge for the oppressed people of all nations. Such legislation as was enacted during this period, including 3 laws for the improvement of conditions on immigrant-carrying ships, indicated the sympathetic attitude of Congress toward the incoming multitudes. Congress again favored the foreign-born by providing that aliens who had declared an intention to become citizens might enjoy the benefits of the Homestead Act of 1862. This privilege was later on destined to accelerate the settlement of public lands in the West. Because manpower in industry and agriculture had been depleted during the war between the states, a federal law to stimulate immigration was enacted in 1864, but it was soon repealed when peace was restored. Federal control. In the absence of federal action, several seaboard states attempted immigration control, but after many years of effort, the Supreme Court held that Congress alone had such power. Congress assumed this power in 1882 when it reluctantly passed the first general immigration law, which provided only that idiots, lunatics, persons likely to become a public charge, and criminals other than political offenders should be denied admission. This law marked the beginning of a policy of quality selection which dominated all subsequent legislation. In 1882, because of Western opposition, Chinese laborers were excluded, a policy subsequently extended to include practically all Orientals. In 1884, a law forbidding the importation of foreign labor under contract was passed, but necessary skilled laborers and members of learned professions were exempted. Thus was Washington's opinion unwittingly honored. While Congress was developing a more stringent selective policy, immigration increased by leaps and bounds with a shift in the incoming tide from northern and western to southern and eastern Europeans. Unable to function economically, socially, or politically in their homelands, a steady stream of immigrants was spreading over the United States in answer to the demand for unskilled labor. For more than 30 years, the words of Emma Lazarus, carved on the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty, had vital meaning. "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, the tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." Checking the tide. The endless stream of newcomers, whose economic and political backgrounds differed from those of the earlier immigrants, led to a search for some method of checking the new immigration. With this end in view, the application of a literacy test was advocated. Presidents Cleveland and Taft had vetoed acts which contained this provision, and President Wilson twice repudiated it. However, it became part of the general law of 1917 over presidential objection. In a reference to the immigrants, President Wilson said, "Some of the best stuff in America has come out of foreign lands, and some of the best stuff in America is in the men who are naturalized citizens of the United States." In the meantime, during the administration of President Theodore Roosevelt, a gentleman's agreement had been made with Japan in 1907, whereby Japan undertook to check the immigration of Japanese laborers to the United States. Immigration from Europe was largely suspended during the World War, but it rapidly increased thereafter until it was checked by the temporary quota limit law of 1921, and definitely limited by the permanent quota limit law of 1924. By this law, immigration was restricted to 150,000 annually, with quotas allotted to the various nations based on the census of 1890. In 1929, the quota based on the census of 1920 went into effect, bringing the total immigration quota to about 153,000 annually. Our present policy. The theory that America should be a refuge for the oppressed of all nations has been quite generally honored in shaping our immigration policy. However, the United States is no longer a refuge for the oppressed people of all the world in the same way as it was in the past. Our present policy is that immigration shall be limited to a fixed number, that such immigrants shall be of good character and well disposed toward American institutions. For, in the words of former President Coolidge, "Whether one traces his Americanism back 3 centuries to the Mayflower or 3 years to the steerage is not half so important as whether his Americanism today is real and genuine. No matter on what various crafts we came here, we are all now in the same boat." Sidebar: Ourselves and our neighbors. A recent dinner in Chicago with Catholic friends, whose parents came from Italy, a conference with a group of 25 cultured Negro men and women at Chicago University, and a visit in Des Moines, Iowa, with a close personal friend of mine, a rabbi, or a few personal experiences which show in a very real way how a relatively free society enables us to enrich our lives through fellowship with men of different races and religions. In this nation, to which more than 38 million immigrants have come during the last 120 years, the struggle of people of all races and of many creeds has been and is consciously toward the goal of human understanding and tolerance. This is an effort to elevate human welfare, irrespective of race, color, or creed, and to rise to new heights of civilization with the help of all contributions to our culture. A distinguishing characteristic of a true American is that he measures men of all races and creeds by their achievement, their honesty of purpose, and their humility. Signed, J.W. Studebaker, Commissioner of Education. End of section. Americans All, Immigrants All, Section 5. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. This recording is by Mark Smith of Simpsonville, South Carolina. Americans All, Immigrants All, by the United States Department of the Interior, Office of Education. Section 5. The Immigrant and Our Economic Progress. The greatest wealth of any nation is its people. Attributed to Alan H. Eaton. To paint an adequate picture of the part which the immigrant has played in the economic progress of the United States, it would be necessary, as Rudyard Kipling says, to splash at a 10-league canvas with brushes of comet's hair. The industrial and agricultural greatness of the United States has been made possible by the brawn and brain of the immigrants and their children. Cotton. The important part played by the Negro in the agricultural life of the South is nowhere more vividly portrayed than by the story of King Cotton. Cotton production, which amounted to 85 million pounds in 1810, doubled every 10 years for the following 3 decades. By 1840, 2/3 of the world's cotton supply was produced in the South, and by 1850, cotton valued at $98 million was raised. In 1937 to 1938, the United States produced 4 times as much cotton as the rest of the world. USA, 18,946,000 bales. Brazil, as an example, 2,107,839 bales. Much of the credit for this amazing achievement goes to the Negro, whose labor has been the foundation of our cotton kingdom. Tobacco. The story of tobacco is, too, largely the achievement of Negro labor. In 1618, the Virginia planters exported 20 pounds of tobacco, which increased to 1,500,000 pounds in 1639 and reached a total of 53 million pounds in 1773. In 1937, the United States raised more than 1/4 of the world's tobacco supply. As an example, USA, 1,553,000,000 pounds. China, 1,400,000,000 pounds. India, 1,200,000,000 pounds. In addition to his labor in the cotton and tobacco fields, the Negro has also helped to make profitable the production of rice and sugar. Railroads. The railroad played a great part in the settling of the West. With the completion of the Erie Canal, the Irish transferred their energy and labor to building tracks for the Transcontinental Railroad. The Chinese also labored on the western end. Today, Irish, Chinese, Italian, and Mexican laborers helped to maintain the railroads. In 1937, almost 1/2 the world's miles of railways were in our country. As an example, USA, 238,539 miles. Russia, 52,425 miles. India, 43,128 miles. Automobiles. Natural resources and inventive genius have enabled us to produce each year 3 times as many automobiles as the rest of the world put together. The work of the Poles, Slavs, Mexicans, and other groups has been an important factor in this phenomenal growth. USA, 4,808,974. Britain, 490,366. Germany, 331,894. Steel. Early colonial iron mills were operated by the Germans, whose muskets, made in Nazareth, Pennsylvania, were used by the Continental troops. In later years, the Poles and Slavs have labored in the great steel mills of Ohio, Pennsylvania, Indiana, and New York. It is the endurance and physical heritage of these sturdy people that have made it possible for us to lead the world in the production of steel. USA, 50,569,000 tons. Germany, 19,536,000 tons. Britain, 12,964,000 tons. Coal. The Welsh, with the Scotch-Irish, were the first to develop our coal mines in Pennsylvania and West Virginia. These, together with the English, Irish, Germans, Poles, and Slavs, have made us the chief coal producer of the world. USA, 488,692,000 tons. Britain, 224 million tons. Germany, 146,696,000 tons. Farming. Our debt to the German farmer is great, for he made the wilderness blossom in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Missouri. To Minnesota and surrounding states came the Swedes, Norwegians, and Finns with their advanced cooperative methods, and the Danes with their dairy methods. Sturdy Czechs farmed Nebraska and Iowa. The Swiss and Wisconsin helped us to become the greatest cheesemakers in the world. The Russians brought us important seed varieties of wheat, rye, oats, buckwheat, sunflowers, and millet. Finns and French Canadians in the lumber camps of Maine and Washington have made it possible for us to produce more than 24 million board feet of lumber in 1 year. Portuguese are prominent in the New England fisheries, as are the Finns on the Pacific coast. The Greeks have developed a flourishing sponge industry in Florida. Italians are engaged in the marble quarries of Vermont and on truck farms of New Jersey and California. End of section.